A Writer Guide. Writer Introduction. I tell you what's going on in the writing field and give you the resources out there, from lists of agents to writing contests. If you want to see your competition in writing books, you can go on smashwords.com, on the general page, and watch the new books pop up as the writers publish them, some for free, many selling for under $3. To me, fiction is a wash unless you have a huge marketing machine backing you up like HarperCollins and you're willing to travel all around on a book tour giving talks, shaking hands, signing autographed copies of your book. The reason is that the supply greatly exceeds the demand. You can go to archive.org, then to archive.org, to totsecom, then to sex, to read all those old sex stories people published for free that now barely exist in the public domain anymore. Every minute or so, a new book pops up on Smashwords, most of them fiction. People like to read though. I'm a member of Goodreads, eBooks.net, Bookboon and several others. There are tons of free older books at Gutenberg, Muncie, etc. Fiction writers and current events writers try to develop a following. They call it a platform. In the publishing biz, the first thing an agent wants to know is how many followers you have on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, YouTube, etc. I see Nick Redfern coming out with a new UFO-style book every 3 months or so, then I hear him on all the talk shows trying to sell it. You can be a writer for hire, going on guru.com and other websites, offering to write reports and stuff like that for a fee on a contract basis. People write short articles like at Huffington Post, Salon, and at all those magazines at aliocanread.com. When you write non-fiction information and try to sell it, the important point is to try to be as comprehensive as possible and offer something that the average person can't find online with a bit of effort, something that saves them time from doing the research themselves, or something unique like some con artist I saw offering insider knowledge on how to get rich. Kevin Trudeau sold 6 million copies of natural cures but was later sentenced to 10 years in jail for his weight loss book, which they said was full of lies, therefore fraud. In the end, it's hard to make much money as a writer of books because loads of people are writing books and publishing them on Amazon, Draft2 Digital, iTunes, Nook, etc. Some people go through every category and try to create a book tailored for that category. The result is a lot of flimsy books for sale. As far as writing fiction, narrative nonfiction, or nonfiction books for entertainment, I'd say forget it, because there are multi-thousands of books in each of these genres. Only the big book publishers have the money and power to hype up any book they want to create massive sales. They're still selling the dream through magazines like Writer's Digest and Goodreads, but it's over because of massive oversaturation. Before the internet came along, someone could write a book with a novel concept, do a lot of publicity through radio talk shows and live talks, and earn a decent living, but nowadays, everything is on the internet. People are tired of writers coming up with new stupid ideas, pretending they're real, then trying to sell them. Just look at all the interviews on YouTube with people trying hawk all kinds of books with silly ideas. It's all been done. They're like carnival barkers trying to sell some hokey new idea, but then again they made a massive killing with The Secret, a garbage self-help book about a decade ago. People write blogs in certain areas, then try to monetize them with Google AdSense, patron donations, selling affiliate products with Amazon and ClickBank, etc. Some blogs do alright, but these people have to fill them up with content all the time. Join Guru for free, then see what the job offers are for freelance writers. Writing as a business to earn money is not the romantic dream that you see in just about every second or third made-for-TV movie where one of the protagonists is a writer who seems to live a dreamy, deep, romantic, advanced, cool lifestyle. Writing to earn a living is hard work if you plan on selling your work to publishers who will resell it. If you plan to do it all yourself, hustle for writing contracts for functional work in the business world, self-publish and market your own work. I feel you have a better chance than people writing novels and non-fiction books hoping to sell them to a big publisher. It's just too damn hard. The world already has way too many novels, non-fiction stories, and even practical books, in my opinion. Sure, you get a few people who fluke out like the Harry Potter stories and a few authors like Stephen King and John Grisham, but a lot of this is luck. They were lucky that somebody from a publishing house decided to hype them up as the fresh new flavor of the month and kept running with it all the way to the bank. I don't feel the Harry Potter stories are superior to other fantasy kids stories. I don't feel that any writer currently on any bestseller list has a special gift more advanced than several thousand pretty good undiscovered writers out there, so my point is simple. Don't write unless you love it, unless it's something you feel you must do. This is a basic book about how to make a living as a writer. It's not about how to learn to write a book, an essay, fiction, grammar, etc. If you want knowledge on that, either refer to my education book or go to number 808 at your local library. If you want to learn computer, internet, and word processing, try number 004-005 at the library. Writing as a business to earn money is not the romantic dream that you see in just about every second or third made-for-TV movie where one of the protagonists is a writer who seems to live a dreamy, deep, romantic, advanced, cool lifestyle. Writing to earn a living is hard work if you plan on selling your work to publishers who will resell it. If you plan to do it all yourself, hustle for writing contracts for functional work in the business world, self-publish and market your own work. I feel you have a better chance than people writing novels and non-fiction books hoping to sell them to a big publisher. It's just too damn hard. The world already has way too many novels, non-fiction stories, and even practical books in my opinion. Sure, you get a few people who fluke out like the Harry Potter stories and a few authors like Stephen King and John Grisham, but a lot of this is luck. They were lucky that somebody from a publishing house decided to hype them up as the fresh new flavor of the month and kept running with it all the way to the bank. I don't feel the Harry Potter stories are superior to other fantasy kids stories. I don't feel that any writer currently on any bestseller list has a special gift more advanced than several thousand pretty good undiscovered writers out there, so my point is simple. Don't write unless you love it, unless it's something you feel you must do from your soul, unless it's an act that you need to do almost every day to release some angst within you in order to keep you inspired about your life. Don't try to imitate the commercial stuff out there that's currently hyped up as hot. Try to develop your own style and tell it your own way regardless of what it is, fiction, non-fiction or practical. Don't be phony. Don't say you're trying to help people by telling your story when it's really a story of an egotistical person looking for fame and fortune. I'm tired of all these phonies writing their little egotistical books about themselves, saying they're trying to help people through their story. What they're really trying to do is get famous and make money. There are tons of these stupid books on the market, all the way from some kid who won some TV Idol contest who wrote a book, as he says, to help people see how nerds who were bullied in school can grow up to become something, a pop culture singer, which is something the world needs like a hole in the head. Then there was the girl who wrote a book about her route to be a hip-hop dancer as a cautionary tale, as she says, but I say it was just about her trying to make some money by exploiting the so-called lurid world of hip-hop. These are not great stories. They're trashy pop culture garbage. I want stories about inspiration, challenge, beauty, originality, mysticism, transcendence, and toughness, not more silly books by flakes trying to hype up some aspect of the pop culture world. I presume that avid readers read because they want some quality entertainment, substance, and inspiration away from all the generic mainstream pop culture entertainment out there, so this is my point. Write about something real. Don't just replicate all the generic pop culture that's out there already. Writing to earn a living is a hard life if you give control of the process to others like agents and publishers. A few people fluke out and sell some books worldwide, but most writers who make it are out there hustling little contracts for themselves with magazines and other media, doing jobs for business and government clients who need their own materials written up clearly and neatly. It's your choice. You can have stars in your eyes. Who am I to deprive you of your dream? Just keep one foot in the real world. Look at self-publishing and writing practical information as opposed to stories which, in my opinion, the world is overfull of, and I rarely see an inspiring piece of fiction or non-fiction anymore anyway. Read this book and hopefully it will tell you what the real world of writing is like. It's not like these characters you see them interview on book TV. Some of these authors are purposely trying to play up to the image of the cool, eccentric, deep, profound, romantic writer, but I've known several published writers of novels living in little dives barely scraping by. It ain't like you see it on TV. A few get lucky. Most won't. Learn all the facets of the writing industry and proceed from there. In my opinion, don't write fiction unless you believe it will be stellar, kinda like a Dickens or Steinbeck piece, a great classic. Why write anything if you don't intend it to be a great classic? Look for a niche in the realm of practical knowledge that people need that can help them live a better life. As far as the writing game goes for money, except for a few great fictional and non-fictional stories out there that very few people ever write, I wouldn't waste my time on anything but writing practical information. That's much closer to a sure thing to earn a living than any story you could ever write. All stories have a certain amount of uncertainty to them. Even the great undiscovered American novel can slip through the cracks, but if you write a great practical book, the odds are much better that it will get published and sell. If you want to learn about the fields of communications and journalism, refer to either my jobs book in that field, my education book, or go to number 70-79 at the library. 070 Journalism, Publishing. 071 in North America. 072 in the United Kingdom. 073 in Central Europe. 074 in France. 075 in Italy and area. 076 in Iberian Peninsula. 077 in Eastern Europe. 078 in Scandinavia. 079 in other countries. Chapter 1. Making it as a writer. Be a writer 1. I will always be a stranger who never feels at home, who does not really want and is not really wanted, who can never belong, who must always be a little in love with death. Eugene O'Neill, Long Day's Journey into Night. I write to find what I'm thinking. A writer is someone constantly obsessed with filling empty pages as a witness to life. The publishing industry is based on hype, not quality. This applies to fiction and non-fiction. Harry Potter is qualitatively no different than the thousands of fantasy books that existed before it came out and afterwards, but one publisher chose to go full hilt in marketing it, which is why it became a billion-dollar property, not because it's a great story, because it's an average fantasy story. It's the same thing with John Grisham or Stephen King. They got some hype behind their names so their books sell and get made into movies, but they don't impress me as anything clever or original. By the same token, the greatest novels in the world are probably unpublished because the publishing industry runs on making money. If it doesn't have an immediate glossy appeal, the agent or the publisher will chuck it. That's the way it works. That's why you probably won't make it as a writer even if you write the greatest story in the world. If you want to see some good rejection letters, go to everyonewho'sanyone.com. Gerard, the guy who runs this website, is a funny guy, but he tells the truth. It's like all your high-minded ideals don't matter in a slick New York office made up of a bunch of people thinking they're really cool and trendy. They're all looking for flash and gloss to make a quick buck. And there's the publishers claiming that their mission is to help people. I read a story about the guy who founded Rodale Books. He was a down-to-earth guy trying to do some good, but if you look at the books Rodale puts out nowadays, it's a slick, glossy marketing machine with their cute diet books that look good but are just cute with no real substance to them. It's all image, pop culture applie to books. Hype costs money. You need to hype a book up to sell it. Without hype, the greatest literature will sit in a dusty corner somewhere. You got these so-called celebrities getting book deals to rant on about their phony, useless lives, then somebody writes a story about how to raise a kid with cerebral palsy which can actually help people, but the publisher will say the market is not big enough for your book or some other stupid thing. The book industry has been invaded by people with pop culture minds. There's no doubt about it. You have to believe in what you do in order to take all the rejection. It's a battle to find an agent, then get it published and try to sell it, and then if you do, you will be lucky if you sell 5,000 copies of it. There's just too much crap out there selling mostly to a limited audience of middle to older aged women looking for a thrill. If you can break through all that to write a genuine mainstream American novel based on something real or a great love story, you can make it, but barring that, your work of fiction will not see the light of day. I can't help but think of a novel I skimmed through recently by an alleged current great, a supposed thriller where the payoff at the end turned out to be aliens from another planet trying to keep us from destroying ourselves. Gimme a break. This is wasteland stuff for Saturday morning cartoons, yet this guy wrote about it as if it were a cool, advanced idea, and I wasted 20 minutes of my time to get to that cheap ripoff. My point is that unless you've got a scream of a story with some kind of neat, spiritual, or realistic payoff, forget it. There's just too much generic whodunit crap out there, and nobody with a real brain really gives a damn about those stupid stories anymore. And why would a real artist waste their time writing duncy stuff for duncy folk anyway? It goes against the true spirit of being an artist, to reach into the greatest depths of your soul to pull out the deepest, most profound, unique, coolest thing you can find, then bear it for all the world to see. And if you do this, some of the mainstream publishers won't touch you because they want sanitized crap for the sanitized masses. When I start talking about my use of hallucinogenic substances to try to break through to my subconscious mind and into the collective unconscious, at least some of the right-wing fundamentalist types don't want to hear it, even though it is one of my most profound interests in life and a profound human dimension, to try to break through mundanity to see what's on the other side. Simply put, if your work as an artist is not politically correct, many publishers won't touch it, contrary to what they say about being free and open-minded. The mainstream publishing industry is very conservative. They want something that will sell to all the middle-aged, middle-class masses out there, like a book about life makeovers or how to manage your time, both dull, generic, psychobabble subjects to me. But let some bohemian come along and start talking about the desire to transcend conscious reality, and it's too disruptive to them. Except for the middle-aged women reading romance or gossip, fiction as the printed word is dead to me. Magazines make a bit of a splash for casual entertainment, but most people watch TV in their leisure time. If you like to write fiction, you might try the magazine route first with a short article just to see how brutally apathetic the world is to your little literary contribution. The only real hot sellers in fiction are romance and the gossipy women's thriller, i.e. Jackie Collins, because they fill a woman's need for fantasy, love and sex. It is truly the woman's pornography, and pornography is a $9 billion a year business in the United States alone. If you can write good stories in any of the several genres, you can make it, but be forewarned, there's stiff competition. There are probably 10,000 romance novels at my local library in a big stack by the front door. Check out my love book for more leads. Incidentally, much of the current romance novel borders on graphic, erotic porn. Information writing is another matter. You could sell the right information book if you happen upon the right topic. For instance, the computer industry, which lent itself to the explosion of the computer instruction book, or consider all the new trends out there like skateboarding, pet psychology, alternative energy, etc. People want convenience, and a well-written book with resources that saves them the hassle of doing it for themselves is worth it to them, so they will pay for it if it's in a relevant subject area. Lest I scare you off with this doom and gloom scenario, let it be known that nobody knows what will sell. I won't let my cynical side show here by going through my personal list of all the bestsellers that I thought absolutely sucked bad. Just let it be known that any flake can make a mint out of a softball book if he or she gets a good title, a seemingly interesting concept, hype, and marketing. If you write some mushy gush, maybe some talk show host will invite you in for a great emotional show, then you will go on CNN and your book will sell 5 million copies. It could happen because people are so bored that they will pay a few bucks for a seemingly interesting read. You just have to believe that what you have is incredible and go with it no matter what. People have had rejections for years only to end up having their books published. The right story could set you up for life. Amateurs fall by the wayside. You've got to pay your dues and do it right. In the end, it's about the style and spirit of you as the narrator who can cut through all the bull out there and offer people something original, noble and worthy. Writing a book-length work of fiction or non-fiction could be a joy if you really enjoy putting your thoughts down on paper, but quite often the problem starts when you try to get it published. It is often easier to write a book than to get it published by a commercial publishing company. Writers often see multiple numbers of rejections when submitting to book publishers. That's not really true. They often don't see many rejections. They see nothing. They get no responses. Many simply give up. That's the real deal. Don't believe what they say in the big writers' magazines too much. They are designed to give you hope so that they can keep selling you stuff. Be a writer too. For hundreds of years, a handful of publishing companies in New York and London controlled most of the books that got published. They had a near monopoly on what the people of the world got to see in terms of knowledge and ideas. Some books aren't very good, but a lot of good ones never see the light of day because some elitist sitting in a cushy office on Fifth Avenue decides for one reason or another to pass on it. There's a lot of patronage in the book industry. They publish their friends' books over talented writers that don't have any connections. Nowadays the internet has leveled the playing field somewhat, but they're still the gatekeepers as to what gets maximum publicity, hype, and marketing in the mainstream media. You can publish your work on the internet, but it will remain obscure unless you can get a big marketing machine to promote it. A lot of so-called celebrities with nothing to say but fluff get book deals and lots of press, while somebody with great knowledge that can help a lot of people is thrown to the curb. It happens all the time. They even manufacture books to try to convey an exotic, easy-breezy image over substance. Think of diet books with cool-sounding names. It's a big marketing ploy to suck people in. The Hawaii diet sounds like it was created by cool, active people hanging out on the beaches of Waikiki telling you their secrets about how to look fabulous. It sounds a lot better than the vegetables and grain diet. Book publishers are still paranoid about the number of pages in the books they publish because every page costs them money. They want to get their costs as low as possible, so they edit books to lower the number of pages to save money. The result is that potentially useful knowledge gets cut out. It's a big numbers game of patronage and insiders. That's why, despite all the hype about obscure people making billions of dollars as with the Da Vinci Code and Harry Potter flukes, chances are you won't make it unless you publish your books yourself on the internet and some big timer gives you a book deal. Be a writer 3. The most essential gift for a writer is a built-in, shock-proof shit detector. This is the writer's radar, and all great writers have it. Ernest Hemingway, in Paris Review. Writing is the hunt to find a truth worth telling, whether it be in fictional form or non-fiction. The smart writer doesn't just write what he wants. He or she writes what he thinks people will want to read, be it fiction or non-fiction. Personally, I think writing fiction is a fluke job, regardless of how good it is. No one piece of fiction is clearly superior to another unless it's a Grapes of Wrath or something like that. Write something that will help people better their lives somehow. For the true writer, it's a lifelong quest that never ends. Anything else, no matter how lucrative, is less than the writer as a true artist. Frivolous fiction doesn't cut it as a worthy product to me unless there's a truth in there about the human condition, which is probably why I read very little fiction. Most of it is meaningless crap to me. Writing in general is just compiling generic facts or telling amusing stories. The only writers I respect are those seeking truth without regard for pop culture popularity or the bottom line, money. Face your fears, put them on paper for all the world to see. Hard writing makes easy reading. When you write, imagine yourself as the reader. Does it suck you in? That's the only true test. Write from the soul only. Writing is easy, selling it is hard. It's a business. Everybody's trying to sell themselves one way or another, all the way from so-called celebrities writing their life stories to the religious gurus with their superficial positive power diatribe and all that crap masquerading as self-help, pop psychology. If you're a cynic like me, you won't buy any of it because you don't need it, you're already enlightened. Fiction to me is a frivolous luxury. Knowledge is power and real, which is why I read non-fiction only and relegate fiction to the occasional, odd moment here and there. If it's inspiring, it's worth it. If it's anything else, I'm not interested. The fiction I create in my mind is generally way more interesting to me than 95% of what I could read out there. The last time I read a fiction novel was about 15 years ago when someone gave me the latest mystery bestseller as a gift, so I figured I might as well read it. For about 220 pages I'm going along waiting for the big payoff, then when the final moment comes, it's cornball and highly improbable. Somebody made a slick karate move, somebody else grabbed the gun, and the girl's unassuming brother suddenly came out of nowhere to be the killer. It was a waste of time for me. I stand by my conviction. Most fiction is generic crap, meaningless chewing gum for the brains of people with nothing better to do, kinda like watching soap operas on TV. I personally am not impressed by the fiction writers they hold out as the current bestsellers. To me, they're flukes who got lucky. When was the last time you saw a great piece of inspiring work like A Grapes of Wrath or a great love story like The Thornbirds? To me, it's 95% hype. Stephen King, Anne Rice, John Grisham, Tom Clancy, and the few other supposed current greats, in my opinion, are no better than many undiscovered writers out there, but by both circumstance and chance, somebody said these are the champion writers of the day, and everybody else in the mainstream, the sheeple, buys into this hype, getting brainwashed by it. This is the way the industry works. You could have the great American novel, but the powers that be don't know and don't really care as long as they can sell their books with a hyped-up author and create generic movies that people will watch even if they're not that good. Maybe you will get lucky and become one of the current bestsellers, but chances are you won't. Even if you do, what's the good of it if you can't write something you can be genuinely proud of as opposed to commercial crap? Most writers, particularly screen and TV writers, live by fearing that they won't sell their work because there's so much overabundance of people sharing the dream of getting rich that way, by selling a few screenplays or novels that will become TV series. The same goes for every fiction writer. Harry Potter was the biggest fluke of the century. There were already hundreds of children's books out there about kids, wizards, dungeons and dragons and all that stuff. It was a bit of luck, a lot of hype and skillful marketing which got it high visibility, then a bandwagon effect. But if you think you're gonna be that fluke that gets on the bestseller list like this, the odds are against you. In my opinion, spend your time learning real estate or stocks and you will go a lot further. If you enjoy the process of writing fiction and don't expect to earn a living off it, that's one thing, but if you want to earn a living or get rich from it, don't kid yourself. The library is already full of thousands of years of fictional works all the way back to Homer and Chaucer. There is an overabundance of fiction in the world. I'm strictly a non-fiction guy except for the occasional piece of meaningful fiction like Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead or Richard Bach's Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Unless writing is something you really feel deep inside beyond just writing a generic shoot-'em-up crime thriller with a gun and a murder, or a stupid love story where the girl gets her flawed but nice guy at the end, forget it, there's just too much verbal diarrhea out there. Why waste time writing more generic crap? The world needs it like it needs a hole in the head. Get real. Chances are you won't sell it anyway, and if you do, it will be for a paltry amount of money. I choose to write non-fiction practical information because it's always needed, always changing, and always has to be updated for the times, therefore it's real and never goes out of style. Very rarely do you see a truly great, touching, inspiring story about life, so I say unless you can write something truly original, unique, touching and inspiring, why bother writing another generic story with a predictable, formulaic ending? On TV, they're recycling the same stories I saw 30 years ago as a kid, the same medical dramas, the same murders, the same tired old soap operas, but the dumb masses watch, which says something about the mentality of our society. Trying to make it as a fiction writer is pretty well a pipe dream, no matter how good you are, unless you have nerves of steel and are willing to spend countless dollars on postage to try to get an agent to recognize your genius, then go to bat for you, or you know somebody who knows somebody who knows Mr. Big who will welcome you with open arms. The truth is that there really isn't that much, if any, difference between someone on the bestseller list and the average undiscovered writer who can write a reasonably good story simply because most material is average and all right. Very little is true greatness. Fiction writing comes down to a few great works throughout history, a large average body of work, and below that, a large substandard body of crap. No one is really clearly superior to anyone else except for the few that have either great literary style, reveal a great human truth, cover a culture, a certain region or time period in history that you can almost feel. Come up with a unique way of looking at things. Move people in some way. Most of it just verbal diarrhea except for the few and far gems in the rough. The few writers who I've admired in my life all had meaning to their fiction. It was a thinly veiled commentary on life, usually their own. And there are very few who are masters of the printed word, making a game and art form of words to write in a cool literary style that you can admire. Everyone plays by the generic formula of what they think they should write to sell commercially instead of writing what they really feel in their souls. Everybody's brainwashed by pop culture. It's all about murder, who cheated on who with a dose of new ageism thrown in. I'm so past all that stuff that I hardly read fiction anymore, it's all the same crap. Break away and write with your own voice if you have the guts. Jonathan Livingston Seagull was so popular because it was such a clear, simple commentary on the soul. Everything else I read seems to be a one-dimensional, clear battle of the hero, the conflict, and the climax. I hate formulas. Go get the bad guys or fall in love, take your pick. All this shoot 'em up, action, suspense stuff is past history as I'm concerned. I've scanned the alleged current greats and the bargain basement clearance novels and I found no difference between them. It comes down to perception. Because somebody is supposedly established, the media and the public seem to think that the product is always good, but every book is an unpainted canvas, a new testing ground, and the real deal fact is that beyond the first novel, most writers write crap regardless of their rep or how many copies they've sold previously. I've scanned atrocious works by the current greats, something that any college student versed in grammar and an endless supply of stupid TV shows could write. Beyond this, fiction writing is a crapshoot and a battle. Walk into any library, any new, Christian or used bookstore, magazine stand, or surf any recreational website on the internet. Everybody who likes to read fancies themselves as a fiction writer and the world is overfull of it. This is your competition. Unless you can write another portrait of the artist as a young man or a fast-paced story based on reality, i.e., Vincent Bugliosi's Helter Skelter or Roger Caron's Go Boy, I'd say forget it. Be a writer for. Start a blog or a website to try to attract readers before you ever write a book. Don't have several websites. Keep it all on one website. Create an author or book group where readers and writers chat. Start a group at facebook.com/groups, then move it to your website or at least a link to it. Start a Twitter account if you want, twitter.com. Post articles on scribd.com. When you write your book, it's up to you to get the manuscript evaluated either for free by a friend or for a fee. You can go on author chat boards and to social media groups looking for someone to edit your book. Either hire a professional book cover designer or design it yourself. Start by publishing the ebook at places like lulu.com, Amazon, and bn.com. They offer digital rights management, which protects against piracy. There is a bunch of information about all the different publishing formats in e-form. I convert from Word to PDF and that's as far as I go. If you're good, you don't need to sell through Amazon or iTunes. Sell through your own website. If you want print on demand, try CreateSpace.com, LightningZource.com or the others. If you are printing a book, you need it professionally formatted and you might need help getting the electronic cover converted to a physical book cover. Get as much publicity you can any way you can, online and offline. Send press releases. Contact newspapers and radio shows for possible interviews. Team up with indie authors to cross-promote books. Do it one step at a time. The query letter info. Many publishers will not accept unsolicited manuscripts. Your query letter can open the door that might have been slammed in the face of your unreviewed work, especially if it is an example of proficient writing and piques the editor's interest, so the bottom line is to make your query letter marketing gold. Don't just send one, send dozens or even hundreds. Rejections are meaningless. If you send out a query letter from the guy or gal currently #1 on the bestseller list without revealing the name, it will be routinely rejected by at least 90% of all agents and publishers out there. This is the way it works. These people often have enough work to keep them busy and ain't about to budge unless they something spectacular as opposed to generic. Refer to Writer's Market and Literary Marketplace for leads. Writing is a tough business. Even if you're great, you could slip through the cracks because no one seems to have time for unknowns because they think they're almost all mediocre and the time spent searching for the diamond in the rough is not worth it to them. Packaging is everything. I can never stress this enough because I saw it for myself several times in my life. When I was sending out query letters for my books, I thought the books were good and it would be self-evident and self-explanatory to the people reading them, so I didn't spend much time on the query letter. I just made my point in a plain way and thought they'd see my wisdom, but what they saw was another plain letter like all the hundreds that they get all the time. After a few hundred rejections and non-responses, I knew I was doing something wrong, so I made my query letter a fantastic, whammo, zoom, zoe work of bullshit art where I showed that I was able to be a master with words and razzle-dazzle them. Learn from me, don't be afraid to hype up your stuff with cheap-sounding gimmicks. It works better than no gimmicks every time. As a library expert, I've seen hundreds of love books at number 306.7 at the library, yet none of them made it big except for one that was packaged with a neat gimmick: men are from Mars, women are from Venus. There are hundreds of self-help books at number 155 to number 158 at the library, but the only ones I remember are those with the catchy titles that had lots of hype behind them: Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, Awaken the Giant Within, Ageless Mind, Timeless Body, and every other gimmick you've ever seen that made some guy rich. On some level, people are simple. They seem to gravitate towards gimmicks. Think gimmick, slogan, a flashy title that covers it all in a few words. The next thing you must realize in your query letter is that it's all business, therefore, just don't tell them how great your book is, say it from a business point of view. You must state your marketing plan, how and why the book will sell and to whom. Your query letter needs to be short, powerful, and persuasive. Sell, sell, sell without being vain, funny, or glib. Don't lie either. Give a brief description of the book here. Say who will read this book. What's your target audience? Keep it short and simple. Fiction is for masochists. There is no rhyme nor reason as to why one average fiction writer gets published over another one and why one becomes a best-selling author and the other barely gets by. Some of it has to do with hype, luck, and the zeitgeist. Most new fiction books are nothing new. They're just a rehash of hundreds of books already at the library. Like I said, there's no rhyme nor reason to it. If you're lucky enough that an agent and editor like your work, you'll make money. If you're a great writer but fall through the cracks because of all the queries the agents and editors get, you'll be PAR for the course. For every writer who makes it, there are 1,000 who don't. The current best-selling writers are not necessarily the best. They had luck and connections on their side. Publishing houses won't read your manuscript. You have to get an agent. It's hard to get one, but you have to impress one of them with your work and sign a contract with them. They'll try to sell your book for you. The Harry Potter books are not qualitatively superior to the many other fantasy children's books published before the first one was. It was just luck that the editor liked the story and hyped it up in the media. The same goes for any writer currently considered a best-selling author. There are thousands of fiction books from the past already at the library. They're all basically the same. Very few people are truly great fiction writers. It's all the same stories about guns, violence, and romance. I'm telling you to think hard before you decide to write a work of fiction because it'll be much harder to sell it than to write it. The scam game. Beware that in all facets of the entertainment industry on the fringes are sub-industries which bank on the naive hopes of the well-intentioned innocent, promising education, connections, instructions, and just about anything else in order to make money from wannabe hopefuls. I've seen services where you paid a few $100 in order to allegedly walk into a room full of producers and introduce yourself to them. Another one is the phony recording consultants who tell you your demo is good and then want you to pay them in order to make a better demo. The screenwriting field is full of it. If any agent or manager wants money from you, forget it, they're not real. If any agent thinks you're any good, they will bend over backwards to help you and not charge you any money up front. There are the phony schools guaranteeing success and the list of scams goes on. Nuts and bolts writer. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you don't know how to write. Writing is personal. Beyond the grammatical rules, there are no experts. The golden rule is editing. Always go back and read your stuff over, changing what you deem necessary. You have to write with heart, gusto, and vigorously believe in what you're saying. You have to write something that has some real emotional or practical meaning to the reader. There are plenty of books, courses, and programs out there about how to be a good writer, but if these people doing these things were such great writers, they wouldn't waste their time teaching it to people, they'd be off writing the next great novel. I don't claim to be a great writer. I feel that some parts of my free spirit books and my love and sex books are great because I uncover some original concepts that I've never seen anyone talk about before, and I try to be as honest as I can without revealing the absolutely true primal me which we all are in the privacy of our minds. But I know I ain't no Steinbeck trying to cover the plight of the poor or Richard Wright trying to paint a portrait of racism, but that's not who I am anyway. I'm a primal being ruled by my true. This can be my only message in all my writing because that's who I am, nothing more or nothing less than this. My only goal is to earn enough money through my writing to live a totally free life answering to no one but myself, and when I die I don't want anyone mourning me and probably won't have anyone mourning me because I will have lived for myself, and that's enough for me. And if I can pass this vibe on to people to help them see that life is nothing more or less than this and they are living by one illusion or another, then maybe I will have served my purpose by expressing my life for what it is and how I feel it should be lived. You can read the books at number 808 at the library for general ideas, take courses at your local college or through distance education websites, or you could take distance education writing courses from one of the many colleges and universities that offer writing programs. I cover distance education in my education book. I don't believe you can take courses to help you become a great writer. It's a creative skill you develop by doing it for years on end. If you want a grammar book, go to number 374.012, number 405-429, or number 808 at the library. I won't waste words here trying to make up for what you didn't learn in grade 3. Another thing is so-called style and formula that hundreds of books have been written about, telling you the step-by-step process of how to write a piece of work. This is all bull. Just write from the heart, even if it's a cold piece of objective fact. I've recently read a few books about grammar, and the universal constant I found is that for some things, there are no hard and fast rules, you just do the best you can. I hate hyphens for almost anything, and semi and full colons are usually unnecessary, plus I hate commas before conjunctions. These are my pet peeves. Everyone who reads and writes has their own. The golden rules of writing are: know what you want to say it briefly and clearly, keep it simple, then quit. Don't waste words impressed with your verbal diarrhea, artsy-fartsy prose, because your readers don't like to waste time reading your egocentric, unnecessary crap. Long ponderous pieces are usually convoluted and boring, however, too much brevity may be too simple, so you need to strike a balance in there. Write as though you're talking to your mother. Many people think that using fancy words sounds educated and impressive, but it's usually a sign of immaturity, a bunch of bull. Keep to your everyday words. Speak English, not garbage. Use plain words rather than technical terms that need explanation. Say what you need to say, no more, no less. Be as informal as possible. Don't assume that because you presume to know what you are trying to say, the reader can struggle through to the same conclusion. Be precise. Never let your first draft be your final draft. Always rewrite it, shorten it, and improve it. Note that if you submit a piece full of grammatical errors to anyone who knows grammar, which is everybody in the business because that's their business, you're pretty well dead in the water unless you have a superior piece of work, because people just can't be bothered with technically substandard stuff unless the substance is great, like a diamond in the rough. Use acronyms sparingly, if at all. Readers who are unfamiliar with an acronym usually must refer back to its first use whenever it appears again. Don't use several words where fewer will do. Keep sentences short. A 20-word sentence is almost too long. Get to the point immediately, open and close with smooth flowing sentences and leave it at that. Don't use phony, gratuitous statements. Don't sound like a bureaucrat. Avoid big bureaucratic words like input, output, utilize, cognizant, constraint, effectuate, knowledgeable, optimize, referenced, scenario, sector, telecon, verbalize, viability, recommendation, agenda, etc. Don't be redundant. Avoid current buzzwords like awesome, proactive, segue, etc. If you didn't learn your grammar and punctuation in grade school, you might consider getting a book and learning as you go along, or hire a proofreader to check your stuff over. There are different schools of thought on quotation marks, but for most purposes, the comma and the period should always go inside the quotes. The dash, exclamation point, semicolon, and the question mark go within quotation marks only when they apply to the material that is being quoted. Otherwise, they're outside. Too few commas lead to vague and unclear writing. Too many slow down reading but improve clarity. You choose what's best. Separate dependent clauses with commas. Use the semicolon sparingly, very sparingly. The dash, 2 hyphens, is a useful piece of punctuation if it is not overdone. The dash separates a secondary but related thought within a sentence. The separation isn't as abrupt as with parentheses. One pair of dashes to a paragraph is ample. If you're not writing fiction, do not use the exclamation point. Be careful with apostrophes. For instance, its is the possessive, not its. Its means it is. For the possessive of proper nouns that end in s, just use the apostrophe. For dates, it's the 1980s, not the 1980s or the 80s as so many people write. Plurals of abbreviations, which should be used very sparingly in any case, also do not use the apostrophe, such as TVs, but use apostrophes to pluralize an individual letter like mind your PS and QS. Generally speaking, inanimate objects should not be put into the possessive, although there are occasional exceptions like the company's policy. At the beginning of the book, the order is inside front cover, title page, copyright page, dedication, foreword, preface, acknowledgements, table of contents, list of illustrations and introduction. At the back, it's appendix, bibliography, references, glossary, index, ordering information. Good writing takes practice. The so-called bestsellers are not necessarily the best writers. Public speaker. Make it personal. It has to be something you like to do. Above all else, be sincere. Anyone can write a book about anything from funeral preparation to real estate to life management to motivating corporate employees, then go on the lecture circuit to libraries, churches, schools, corporations, and media to hawk their book and give a great speech. There's money to be made as a speaker and promote your books at the same time if you're a writer who's willing to do it. The golden rule is to enjoy or act like you enjoy what you're talking about. Get involved with your audience. If you speak candidly from the heart, nothing else really matters. As a former teacher, I had to become a master public speaker to keep the students entertained. That's the real challenge to any public speaker, to get them so spellbound in what you're saying that you can hear a pin drop in the room. It's so interesting. Unfortunately, this happens very rarely. Most of the time it's just kind of like a routine exchange of information, which is wrong in and of itself if you don't spice it up with personal anecdotes and interesting facts and figures you've picked up from other sources like real life, magazines, books, TV, etc. Multimedia helps, but in the end, it's just a gimmick. Nothing replaces the speaker in direct contact with his audience. Multimedia is simply any technical aid that you might use, like an overhead projector, cassette recorder, VCR, movie, computer, etc. Public speaking, getting up to speak in front of a crowd, is one of the greatest phobias that people have. They're afraid they will get flustered and nervous when that instant happens, when all eyes are on them waiting to be educated or entertained, and they will start stuttering or lose control. One way to deal with it is to come in with the attitude that you're the guy in control, not in an aggressive kind of way, but you're the man, you're in charge and you're gonna do it. Instead of focusing on yourself and your petty ego, focus on your listeners, their needs to hear a good speech. Focus on yourself as a conduit of positive power, passing it off to them. Everybody gets nervous before speaking before an audience. I've been up close with veterans like full professors. All get nervous. After 4 years of teaching, I still had a few seconds of anxiety sometimes before I walked into the classroom. It helps if you feel good about yourself physically, meaning wearing some good clothes, get all cleaned up and groomed so you look the best you can, to give you some extra confidence. To me, it's all about speaking how I think, simply, clearly, following a pattern of logic that makes sense. There's got to be one definite main point to your speech, the theme. A speech about everything is a speech about nothing. Anyone can spew out a bunch of facts about a topic, but to try to present it in a developmental fashion that weaves a story and has a definite conclusion or endpoint is a true art phone number. Forget about fancy words and flowery phrases, keep it simple, stupid, kiss. To be perfectly corny, a great speech is a speech that reflects the care the speaker has given to make it worthwhile for his audience. Be brief. It's too bad that school is all about long, tedious lectures. A true speech should be short and sweet, 20 minutes tops and you're out of there. You can say the most important thing in the world in 20 minutes. Be light with your presentation. Humor is good if it makes sense to your speech. Don't make a joke out of something unrelated out of the blue. Show the audience that you understand them with your insights. Pacing is everything. Don't rush. Develop your own tempo. When you screw up, ignore it and keep going. Don't stall ever, keep it moving. Be yourself. Thank the audience for their time. Open the floor for questions, then tell them in a definite statement that it's over, they can leave or come meet you if they want. Don't be overly friendly like the audience is your good buddy from way back. Know your place, you have to earn their respect. Speak louder than your normal talking voice. Look at individuals for a few seconds each right in the eye to let them know that you're with it. Don't ever read anything for more than 30 seconds to a minute. It's okay to get away from the lectern and move around a bit even into the audience while speaking. Be a little animated with your hands, body movements, voice inflection, etc. Instead of stammering with ah or pause to give the audience time to absorb the info. Use your own gestures, respect your own quirks. Get rid of your ego and put the attention on your listeners. Speak in a flow. Do what comes naturally. Speak as simply as possible. In a nutshell, the name of the game is preparation and experience. Experience will ease the tension, but every polished speaker prepares like crazy before the big speech by writing out all the ideas, then going over them in his mind until he's just about got it committed to memory. Of course, you bring the notes in with you when you're making your speech, but you can't realistically expect to look at them for more than a few seconds to refresh your mind. There have to be keywords there that spark off the whole concept for you. When the president goes on TV for a big State of the Union address, he's gone over that speech with a fine-tooth comb at least 5 times the night before, practicing and editing with his speech writers. He makes it look easy, but he worked his butt off to get it that way. Visualize it in your mind. You have to put yourself into situations where you practice and practice. The easiest way to learn public speaking is to become a teacher and teach a course for a while. That's the only way to master it. The most important thing is to be yourself, say what you have to say, no more and no less. Be polite, friendly, and nice. Don't try to act eloquent and phony. Say it like you're telling it to a group of 10-year-old friendly faces. For me, it was kind of like a spiritual, intuitive thing. I would write my ideas, memorize them and spice them up with things from my own life, and I would try to present it as an unfolding story. A good public speaker is a master storyteller. Of course, you can't always do this with dry material, but you should try to do the best you can. Tell a story that makes sense. Don't knock 'em dead in the first 2 minutes then go flat for the rest of the time. Try to build it up to the whammo points. Use your charm and charisma to make the main points with passion if need be. Listen to the voice within. Release the true natural flow of what you really feel about the subject. Sing it with words figuratively, but don't get too dramatic. Keep both feet on the ground. Paint a picture on a canvas with words. Stand up to your audience as though it's you and your naked self, revealing yourself to them. Don't be arrogant. Don't assume anything. Explain all points adequately, but don't get so caught up with trivial points that you lose sight of the theme. Don't rush out of nervousness. Give them time to digest the information between points. That means to pause and say nothing for several seconds. Don't rely on your audience to be sympathetic. You're up there alone. They're in a passive frame of mind. They expect you to entertain them, and some even think that you're an expert on the subject matter even though you just learned it yourself the night before. You will find a few sympathizing souls in the audience, some people who actually like you personally and will come up to talk to you after your speech. Some people are brown-nosers, doing everything by the book to get brownie points. You can't deny them because they're trying. Humor helps. Throw a few jokes in to lighten it up. Some people start with a joke, quote, or a story, or they will write something out on the board. Speak slowly. Try to get a good tone to your voice. Don't ramble. Don't use your hands if you are not comfortable with it, and don't use them excessively as mannerisms while you speak. Just use a good balance. You don't have to walk around much. You can just stay in place. For classroom speaking, writing things on the board is good because students like to take notes and it sets a pace for the lesson. If your mouth gets dry as mine would, bring a glass of water with you. Don't be cute. Not all people are on your wavelength. Your cute story will be embarrassing if it backfires. People will just look at you with no response whatsoever. Just be straight up and direct. Communicate your information. Allow questions and answer them to the best of your ability. If someone challenges you, be cool. Tell them you can't split hairs, you can only take information so far. This is your job, you have other interests besides this. The others will take your side. If you're teaching, ask questions, then pause to put pressure on them to answer. Don't try to please everybody. You will always get a few cynics who will act bored and sneer at you regardless of what you do. People are usually nervous for the first minute or so, but once they get the juices flowing, they're okay. I always approached my lesson plans with the idea of basic simplicity. I would start by defining what I was going to say, introduction, say it, main body, then review it all, conclusion. Don't get carried away with subsidiary thoughts, just stick with the main points. Repeat them if necessary. In a nutshell, use the following guidelines. Feel fresh and confident. Have a good opening. Don't get bogged down with details. Keep it simple. Know your stuff. Identify your key points. Believe in what you say. Use some humor. Don't be too long. Don't be overly dramatic. Be straightforward. If in doubt, cut it out. Know your audience. Be ready to fly by the seat of your pants, meaning be spontaneous if you feel the urge. Use visual aids or chalk. Give handouts, etc. Take it easy. Lighten up. It's only a speech. Rehearse several times. Be aware of your body at all times. Always ask if there are any questions. You can give lectures, seminars, speeches, workshops, offer a class, offer consulting services as an expert, or even sponsor an entire convention around your particular theme, inviting other speakers in. You can either rent hotel convention rooms or find bookstores, stores related to your subject area, libraries, churches, and learning institutions to rent you space for a nominal fee. You can contact cruise ship companies, addresses in my travel book, and ask them if they'd like you to speak in your chosen topic. They might not pay you but give you free passage where you can plug your books. If you want to go on the lecture circuit professionally, get a lecture agent to represent you. For a list of lecture agents, either get Richard Weiner's Professional Guide to Public Relations Services or refer to the appendix of Jeffrey Lant's Unabashed Self-Promoter's Guide. You can find lots of books about public speaking at number 808.51 at the library. Some deal with fear, some with humor, some are Toastmaster books. The 800s at the library is the literature section. You might find some interesting one-liner, quote-type books from number 808.00 to number 808.85 to spice up your speech. The humorous literature section is number 817. SpeakerNetNews.com, SpeakersEarch.com, SpeakersAreVices.com, Speaking.com, SpeakingCircles.com, SpeakingsUCSS.com, Toastmasters.org, Public Speaking, Toastmasters.com. Chapter 2. The Meat of Writing. Learn the lingo at bookjobs.com/commonly-used-terms. Learn the terms. Writing Guide. When making a deal with a publisher, don't sell your intellectual property rights away. Ask yourself, what is the purpose of what you are writing? Is it to inform, educate, persuade, inspire, make someone feel good, entertain? Keep your purpose clear as you write. A guy reading a money book doesn't want to waste time reading your jokes or stories. Someone reading a fictional novel don't want a lesson on how to ride a sailboat. If you are writing to persuade, include all your pro-arguments, use real-life examples, then tear the counter-argument apart. Write for your intended audience. Use slang with hippie, blue-collar types. Be straight and pious with middle-aged and older Christians. Know what your audience thinks like and likes and give it to them. Write your first draft, then edit, edit, edit. Many professional writers edit their stuff 100 times or so. You're supposed to hook them with an interesting introduction where you tell them what you will say. Every paragraph should be a complete idea and not more. If there are two separate ideas, make 2 paragraphs no matter how short they are. Try to make it all a smooth flow. Get your main points out quickly. Close with a summary of your introduction, i.e., retell them what you just told them. Don't bullshit in information writing. Stick to the relevant facts. Minimize meaningless filler. Always focus on a main idea or argument. The best non-fiction writers are invisible. It's objective information. You can't figure out their religious or political beliefs from the text. This is almost impossible to do, and most people want a bit of opinion in there, so I say keep it 80% objective, 20% personal rantings. Fiction to me is a free-for-all. You can write anything you damn well please. Most fiction book publishers are narrow-minded though. They want stories and novels to follow basic literary formulas, i.e., plot, conflict, character development, conclusion. For large reports, make an outline. Continue to revise your draft. As you edit, take out redundant phrases that repeat what has already been said. Correct spelling and grammatical errors. Clarify the ambiguous text. Try number 800 to number 809 at the library for writing instruction books. Writers and editors. The following article is a summary of an article from the federal government's Occupational Outlook Handbook, bls.gov/oco/ocos089.htm. Writers and editors communicate through the written word. Writers develop original fiction and non-fiction prose for books, magazines, trade journals, newspapers, technical studies and reports, company newsletters, radio and television broadcasts and advertisements. Editors supervise writers and select and prepare material for publication or broadcasting. Writers start by selecting a topic or being assigned one by an editor, then they gather information on the topic through personal observation, library research, and interviews. Sometimes they may change the focus to a related topic that is more interesting. From the information gathered, they select and organize the material to be used and write their stuff. Writers often revise their work, searching for the best organization of the material or just the right phrasing. News writers are employed by newspapers and radio and television news departments to write news items for inclusion in newspapers or news broadcasts. Starting with information supplied by reporters or wire services, they write news stories or scripts for newscasters. These people are often journalism majors from college, even though a lot of English literature majors get into this business. Established writers may work on a freelance basis where they sell their work to publishers or publication units, manufacturing firms and public relations and advertising departments or agencies. They sometimes are hired to complete specific assignments such as writing about a new product or technique. Editors frequently do some writing and almost always do much rewriting and editing, but their primary duties are to plan the contents of the publication and to supervise its final draft. They assign topics to writers and oversee the production of the book, magazine, or newspaper. In small organizations, one editor has full responsibility for the publication. In larger ones, an executive editor oversees the activities of associate or assistant editors who have responsibility for particular subjects such as fiction, international news, or sports. Administrative duties of editors include hiring and firing writers and other employees, planning budgets, negotiating contracts with freelance writers, and general managerial duties. In broadcasting companies, program directors have responsibilities comparable to those of editors. Editors and program directors are often helped by assistants who may have the title of assistant editor or production assistant. Many of these assistants hold entry-level jobs. They review copy for errors in grammar, punctuation, and spelling. They check manuscripts for readability, style, and agreement with editorial policy. They add and rearrange sentences to improve clarity or delete incorrect and unnecessary material. Researchers, research assistants, and some editorial assistants perform research for writers and verify facts, dates, and statistics. Assistants also may help prepare material for publication or broadcast by arranging page layouts of articles, photographs, and advertising, or by planning the use of films. They may also compose headlines, prepare copy for typesetters, and proofread the printer's galleys. Some editorial assistants read and evaluate manuscripts submitted by freelance writers or answer letters about published or broadcast material. Production assistants clip stories that come over the wire services printers, answer phones, and make copies of material for news writers, editors, and program directors. Nearly a third of salaried writers and editors work for newspapers, magazines, and book publishers. Substantial numbers also work on journals and newsletters published by business and non-profit organizations, such as professional associations, labor unions, and religious organizations. Others write and edit advertising and public relations materials for advertising agencies, public relations firms, and large corporations. Some also work in radio and television broadcasting, others develop publications for federal, state, and local governments. Persons who write and edit for major book publishers, magazines, broadcasting companies, advertising agencies, and public relations firms and the federal government tend to be concentrated in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Boston, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. More widely dispersed throughout the country, on the other hand, are those who work for newspapers, corporations, and professional, religious, business, technical, and trade union magazines or journals. Thousands of other persons work as freelancers, earning some income from their articles, books, and, less commonly, television and movie scripts. Most support themselves primarily with income from other sources. Formal educational requirements for writing and editing jobs vary. A college degree is required by many employers, but there is little agreement as to the preferred major. Some employers look for a broad liberal arts background or a major in literature, history, philosophy, or one of the social sciences. Others prefer to hire people with degrees in communications or journalism. Whatever their educational background, writers and editors must be able to express ideas clearly and logically. Creativity, intellectual curiosity, a broad range of knowledge, self-motivation, and perseverance are also valuable assets. For some jobs, the ability to concentrate amid confusion and to produce under pressure is essential. Familiarity with word processing equipment is useful because a growing number of organizations are using the equipment for writing and editing. Since writing requires research, writers must be familiar with research techniques. Editors must have good judgment in deciding what material to accept and what to reject. They must also have tact and the ability to guide and encourage others in their work. All prospective writers need practical writing experience. High school and college newspapers, literary magazines, and small community newspapers and radio stations all provide valuable but sometimes unpaid experience. Many magazines, newspapers, and radio and TV stations have summer internships in which students can learn about the publishing and broadcasting business. Interns might run errands, answer phones, conduct some research and interviews, or even write short pieces, depending on the employer. Advancement for writers and editors depends, in part, on the size of the organization for which they work. In small firms, beginning writers and editors may do a little bit of everything, not only working as editorial or production assistants but also writing or editing material right away. They often advance by moving to other firms, so turnover among beginning writers and editors is high. In larger firms, jobs are usually structured more formally. Persons in entry-level positions generally do research, fact-checking or copy editing. They take on full-scale writing or editing duties less rapidly than do the employees of small companies. Advancement comes as they are assigned more important articles to write or edit. Employment of salaried writers and editors by newspapers, periodicals, book publishers, and non-profit organizations including research agencies and religious, business, professional and civic associations is expected to increase with growing demand for their publications. Growth of advertising and public relations agencies should also be a source of new jobs. Besides jobs created by increased demand for writers and editors, many job openings will occur as experienced workers in this field transfer to other occupations or leave the labor force. Each year, thousands of young people with college degrees in English, journalism, communications, and the liberal arts seek writing and editing jobs. Many end up in other occupations because the number of people qualified to work as writers and editors greatly exceeds the number of positions available, despite the high turnover in these occupations. Persons preparing to be writers and editors should also have academic preparation in another field as well, either to qualify them as writers specializing in that field or to enter that field if they are unable to find a writing job. Writers and editors communicate ideas and information to individuals for their education and entertainment. Other communications occupations include newspaper reporters and correspondents, radio and television announcer, advertising and public relations workers, and teachers of journalism. Phonerbooks.com/editor.htm, How to edit and proofread a manuscript. Jobs.awn.com. Journalismjobs.com. Mediabistro.com/joblistings/jobview.asp. Mitchell.com/mitch/careercenter/jobs.asp. Bookdoctor/book editing services. There are hundreds of people offering book editing services to prospective writers claiming to help them make the book better so it will have a better chance of being published by a publisher. They cost at least $500. Are they worth it? It depends on the book doctor. Many are rip-offs judging by comments I've read on writer forums. If an agent or publisher you never heard of that you sent a query letter to sends a letter back and recommends a specific book doctor before they consider your book, it's a scam. Don't waste your money. Chapter 3. A few writer ideas. General writing job ideas. Copywriting for television commercials. Copywriting for radio commercials. Copywriting for newspaper and magazine ads. Professional letter writing. Creating plots for other writers. Writing correspondence courses. Traveling writer. Newspaper feature writing. Writing for weekly tabloids. Writing humor. Writing greeting cards. Writing witty sayings for bumper stickers. Writing fillers for newspapers and magazines. Ghost writing. Script writing for movies. Script writing for television. Writing plays. Resume service. Writing non-fiction. Freelance writing ideas. Daily newspapers. Professional journals. Consumer magazines. Confessional magazines. Poetry magazines. Fiction magazines. Farming, dairy, poultry, livestock journals. Technical journals. Manufacturers' trade journals. Retail trade journals. Sports magazines. Teenagers' magazines. Children's magazines. Gag magazines. Newspaper column writing ideas. Crafts. Art. Celebrities. Street interviews. Traveling. Years ago today local street names. Gossip column. Personal problems. Gardening. Cooking. New products. Child care. For teenagers. Children's question and answer. With humor and jokes. Sport. Pets. Shopping. Cars. Hunting and fishing. Do it yourself. Publishing ideas. A newsletter. Sportsman's bulletin. Bulletin for the handicapped. Apartment bulletin. Club bulletin. A tourist guide. Restaurant guide. A home business guide. Part-time and freelance help directory. Teacher's yearbook. Small newspaper. Magazine. Miscellaneous writing ideas. Advertising. Public relations. Press secretary. Speechwriter. Copywriter. Technical writing. Journalism. Teaching. Book publishing field. News writing. News reporting. Sports writing. Comedy writing. Critic. Publicist. Agent. Press agent. Entertainment journalist. Playwright. Newspaper writing. Magazine writing. TV writing. Proofreading. Freelance editing. Become an author's agent. Teaching English. Write fantasy/science fiction. If you really want to write science fiction, horror, fantasy, or any other genre and make a living at it, I suggest you first do some long and powerful soul searching, because many before you have tried and failed, not because they weren't any good but simply because the market is just not there. Go to your local library to the science fiction section, see the thousands of books there and know that you are competing against all these and also many new ones by the so-called established writers every month, plus the fact that most science fiction novels sell less than 5,000 copies to a limited demographic group anyway, so I say unless you're nuts, don't do it, or just do it for a hobby. I lived near a pretty famous science fiction writer who was barely getting by in his little apartment. Only a lucky few make it, and it's not necessarily talent that sells, it's talent plus luck. There are very few great writers. Everybody else writes verbal diarrhea and it's all the same generic stuff, so unless you have super special, great ideas, think again. If you want to write SF, first buy all the magazines you can find in the field. Check them out in a periodical directory at the library if you have to. Magazines like Amazing Stories, Aboriginal SF, Omni, Asimov's SF, Fantasy and SF, Analog, Locus, etc. Read them over, look for contests, submission guidelines for short stories, read the stories, then start by writing short stories and submitting them for consideration. This will put you in the groove of the process. Tedious, slow and heartbreaking when you get rejections and or no responses at all. Once you get better, find the anthology and short story books and try submitting to them. Read some Hugo and Nebula winners from past years. The categories are: short story, 1 to 499 words, novelette, 7,500 to 14,999 words, novella, 15,000 to 39,999 words. Novel, 40,000 plus words. There are other smaller SF awards around too. Being a good writer doesn't necessarily mean that you let your imagination go unfettered. People are simple, they want simple, predictable things. You have to pick a specific subcategory of SF or fantasy, study it and tailor your writing to that subclass. People want organized simple stories that they can understand and not lose hold of. I can't tell you how many hundreds of convoluted SF novels I scanned over and rejected as bullsh*t. Too many writers are impressed with themselves. They create worlds and all kinds of characters, but they don't realize that the reader gets lost in all of this and just wants a simple, archetypal story. Your main focus is always your protagonist. He or she must be lovable or sympathetic in order to get any kind of response from readers. By definition, SF and fantasy are stories that are either or all of set in the future, another time with revisionist historical facts, set in outer space or other worlds, defy the laws of physics and nature, or are set in prehistoric times. The main boundary between SF and fantasy is that SF conforms to some semblance of physical, scientific law within its own parameters, while with fantasy, any ridiculous so-called magic can pop up at any time. When you write SF, keep the integrity of your story parameters. Make definite rules of engagement for your world, otherwise you're just writing a piece of crap, i.e., if you're writing about spaceflight or time travel, set up parameters for it right from the outset, like maybe warp speed, hyperspace, wormholes, or for time travel, the concept of the time paradox. Changes you make affect the future course of life on the planet. You're invisible, or like quantum leap, you enter another's body. If you're good, people will pick up on the rules and play along. The same deal works for magic and fantasy. It's okay to invent a new history, new worlds, new words, a new pseudo-language, elaborate scenery, but if you go overboard, people will get bored. I remember reading a SF book where the guy went on and on about the spaceship. I chucked the book fast. These things are all incidental to the storyline, which is supposed to be the main deal. I'm not gonna bore you with all the generic stuff about story writing, except to say that SF is no different than anything else. It's all about a sympathetic main character, a good story, and a strong emotional connection that keeps you going. A love story almost always adds to any story, it's just the way it is, either love or a super-duper adventure. Don't forget humor. Surprise endings are incredible if you can pull it off, like the one in Planet of the Apes where the astronaut realizes he's back on Earth and the human race has destroyed itself. How many do you see like that? One good surprise ending could sell you a movie deal. Other than that, the real deal is that the mainstream is just not into SF. They like more simple concrete stuff like stupid sitcoms and cop stories. It's just the way it is. It goes without saying that you must be literate with a good command of the language. Be descriptive, but people get bored when you get too full of yourself. In essence, I say find one strong, simple storyline that people can relate to and stick with it for the duration of your story. Don't go all over the place trying to create fantastic worlds, because that's all incidental to the bottom line, which is simply a good old-fashioned story with an archetypal theme. yahoo.com/business_and_econo-new york/companies/books/science_fiction_fantasy_horror. sci-fi.com. sff.net/sff. sci-fiweekly.com. sci-fi. About.com is dead. Try thoughtco.com, thebalance.com and verywell.com. Horror.org. Horrornet.com. jolmara.ce.chalmers.se/sf_archives. seidel.ncsA.uiuc.edu/sfnf-writers. sfhelios.physics.utoronto.ca/sfchome.html. sflovers.rutgers.edu/web/sfrg. sfrt.com. webcom.com/tilde-victory/sfnovel.html. List proc@loc.gov. Subscribe to sflit. Listserv at maelstrom.stjohns.edu. Subscribe to FW, Fantasy Writers. Listserv at listserv.aol.com. Subscribe to Fantasy 1. Sci-Fi Chronicles Magazine. POB 022730. Brooklyn, New York 11202. 718 643-9011. Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. 532 LaGuardia Place. Number 632. NYC 10012. sfwa.org. Sell your jokes. You can sell your good jokes to comedians and cartoonists if you follow simple procedures when submitting, but like greeting card writing, this is an extremely competitive field, and unless you are very good, you cannot expect to make a living at it. Start by looking through the latest edition of the Writer's Digest or Writer's Market under gag writing. Make a study of this section of the book before you start writing gags and making submissions. If you want to give this a try, start writing gags immediately and file a lot of them, several hundred if possible, before making your submissions. The more you have to choose from, the better your choices will be and the better your chances of making a sale. Be aware that payment for cartoon ideas is not as good as for greeting cards. If you get some positive response from your submissions, you might want to start hanging around at comedy dubs. Young comics need the very best material that they can get if they hope to make any sort of name for themselves, and many will be happy to pay $2 to $5 for a good line, provided, of course, that you don't turn around and resell it to someone else the next day. Many daily newspapers and magazines pay cash for good jokes, but they tend to get swamped with submissions, so unless you have a lot of faith in your idea, you just might be wasting postage. More ideas. Some people make some money by setting up an informative website on the internet and then charging a few bucks a month for updated, current info, but even though some people are making money at this, I think it would be tough because just about everything is free on the internet. If you can find some specialized info that people will pay for, go for it.